So the one I would pick it is I think their defensive aggression. I think that has been a pretty big constant for Michigan, especially in the Harbaugh era. Um, Unfortunately, with Don Brown, the lack of adjustments has hurt them in big spots. But even with that, I think when you look at the success that they've had as far as rankings with their defense. Like they have put together a pretty good defense when it comes to the rankings. And Harbaugh's had, obviously it's been well documented, his challenges with ranked teams on the road, things like that. But overall, that is a difficult thing to manage, and I think it'd be inaccurate just to put that all on the defense. But I think their style of defense of just aggressive. I think they've blitzed less since Don Brown has been gone. So I don't think they're as heavy of a all out blitz man team as they used to be. But overall, I feel like their style of defense is aggressive. And obviously, I think that's a really good way to play defense overall. So I would say that is their strength and something that they can hang their hat on. The thing that I would say they struggle with would be consistency. And I know that's probably something that could be said about every single football team, but just the consistency of just number one, week in and week out, but just year in and year out. We saw, and this was pre Jim Harbaugh, but we saw Dre, and I think we talked about this last week on the stream, but the Devin Gardner game against Ohio State. I mean, that team was bad. That Michigan team was bad. And, they're a 2-point conversion away from, upsetting Ohio State, who I think was 1 or 2 at that time. Like, it was a really good Ohio State team. So, of course, he had changes and things like that happened afterwards. But just, I think the level of consistency on a yearly basis, on a week-to-week basis, is something that I think it's something that they can improve on. And, to kind of reiterate the point I made earlier, it's going to be crucial this year to make sure that they have that consistency every single week. Because outside of, the first 4 weeks of the season, after that, every other game essentially on the schedule, you have the potential to lose. Like, I think Michigan's a really good team, but we see it, week in and week out. And Mark's made comments on it that you can look at the top 25 and basically, I think he said 20% of those teams are going to lose, get upset. So, yes, there is a certain cachet that you have because you're going to be probably ranked top 5, preseason, but you also have to beware because that happens on a regular basis of, top teams getting upset. We saw Clemson lose in week 1. We saw, Alabama lose to Texas A&M. Like, and the list goes on of those top ranked teams, losing. So, I think that'll be important.
Well, you're not talking about last year. I mean, that was because they actually lost to when it ended up being the national champions. Were they ranked number 1 last year?
And they lost plenty more games than that. The point still stands.
Yeah, I know. I get your point. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's kind of unfair. Like Clinton, Georgia. I thought it was a great game. You thought it was trash. 7-14 was it?
No, it was 10-3. The only touchdown scored was a defensive touchdown.
I knew it was a touchdown difference. So anyway,
but nonetheless, the point still stands.
Yeah, the point stands. No, I get it. And yes, consistency, and they do a really good job with their defensive approach. For me, it's never been about the defense. Ever since Rich Rod's been gone, I never really had an issue with the defense for Michigan. It's been more, except for the Down Brown, Dr. Blitz. Dude, come on, man. Like, what is this? NCAA 14. What you're just going to do? You can do an all-out blitz all day. Like, no, this isn't a video game. People adjust. And this isn't some kind of cheat code where you just do and it's going to work every time. But whatever. No, it's offense philosophy, because especially in college football, offense is key. You got to have some defense, but you got to be able to put up points, and you got to be able to do it efficiently. So that's where the center of focus is and should continue to stay, because you got to have that. You can get away with an average or solid defense and go pretty far. You may not be able to win a national title, but you can go pretty far as long as your offense is top notch. top five offense, right? So I definitely see a point there, Des. But I just think that they look they can they're I say this every week. They're at this crossroads, in my opinion, where they have established last year beating Ohio State, winning the Big Ten, puts them at this point where they now have a banner. They've beaten their biggest rival. If they can get them for a second year in a row, maybe win another Big Ten title, maybe now you are showing that you are a true player, on a consistent basis, being in the college football playoff. And that's the case, then you're a true player and contender for maybe winning a national title. Like I just think this is a momentum type year where they can just somehow capitalize on that. Maybe they can kind of change the tide, and we're able to start swinging some of those big time recruits and say, hey, you can win a national title here at Michigan. We haven't done it yet, but it's possible. We play at the highest level at the end of the season. You know what I'm saying? So I can't stress it enough. I just think that this year's a grand opportunity. I think Mark D'Antonio at MSU had a grand opportunity after 2015. Unfortunately, it was at the end of his run. It was towards the end of his run at MSU more than it was the middle, where he really picked up momentum in the program and took it to another level. Can you imagine if Mark Antonio was like in the middle of his tenure at MSU, and then they go to the college football playoff, and what he would have been able to potentially do and ride that wave going forward? It's I just think that it's rare air, and I just don't want to go back to how things were. I think they have a chance to not just be Ohio State 1, then it's 2, 3, 4, some jump between Michigan State, Penn State, and Michigan, right? I want to be in that 1A, 1B range, us and Ohio State, and then it's MSU and Penn State and everyone else. I think they have a really good opportunity to take that next step.
Okay. Mark, what are your thoughts on the strengths and weaknesses that we mentioned, and do you have your own that you think Michigan could say or that you think that they can hang their hat on, or things that need to improve?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said about strengths or weaknesses. The strength that I'll go to is the brand. So if you look at the Block M and you look at the Michigan brand, and a huge component of it has to do with football, but it's not just football, it's academics, it's the university and the reputation the university's built as a school, the money that comes with that, of building up that type of reputation, that type of academic status nationally, the basketball program at times, all of that athletic prowess, top to bottom, even in the Olympic sports. So beyond just nationally, worldwide, it's one of the strongest brands athletically and academically in the country. So that's the strength that I first and foremost thought of when I saw Dre's question. The weakness, and this is relatively speaking, because of course we're not comparing Michigan to Illinois. We're comparing Michigan to what we think the standard should be in the conference and beyond. And I would say that the recruiting's not bad. I wouldn't say that it's top 10 good, but as I've kind of explained at different times in outlining the recruiting, that there is a difference between a top 3 or 4 recruiting class and a top 10 recruiting class. And when that gets piled on top of each other, for one particular class, there's a gap. But when you talk about 2 and 3 and 4, and then five rosters or 5 classes are comprised in a roster, I think that widens the gap. And I think Michigan, when you see Ohio State has gotten 3 commits in the top 50 in the last 3 days. And I just think that there's a recruiting gap there that and it's not all about just talent acquisition, but that's a huge portion of it. I don't know what the percentage is. Is it 70%, 75%? You got to obviously get them on campus. You got to develop them. You got to coach them, prepare them for the games, and you got to make
We
adjustments
know
during
that.
the games. There's a
Trust me.
lot
We
more
struggle
to
with
it
that in
than just
Michigan.
rolling the ball
Absolutely.
out. But I do think that they, because of where they are located and because of what Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, those three primarily, and then you see hits from Texas A&M and Clemson and LSU, that they're operating at a deficit there.
Yeah. And that's where, the big C word is what comes to mind: culture, 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 culture. And the best way that you can kind of, you can't close that gap in terms of the recruiting ranking unless you actually get the recruits. However, you can help close that gap on the field by culture and player development. Are you able to find, you get more, you get you get 3 stars compared to one program getting more 4 stars, but are you able to have some of those 3 stars outshine those 4 stars because you're able to find out, hey, you know what, this kid has hidden talent. Maybe they still going through a growth spurt. Maybe they just need to be in a weight room a little bit more, and it takes their game to another level. Are you able to instill a certain tenacity and focus every Saturday in which your team plays like their hair's on fire? They play tough, they play mean, they play smart. They don't beat themselves. All those small things help and definitely translate on the field, and they can make the difference because you can have 4.2 speed, but my corner runs your receiver runs a 4.2, my corner runs a 4.5. But if my corner is smart and understands, how to play coverage and how to rotate the hips and how to read the quarterback, how to read the receiver, read their routes, read their breaks. That can make all the difference in the world. Like Richard Sherman is not a very fast corner. He never has been, but he's extremely intelligent. So it's like all those things matter at receiver. Like you don't have to run super fast to be a good receiver. You need some speed, but it's all about coming out of your breaks. I think Cooper Kupp, the Super Bowl, he wasn't the MVP. It was Matt What was it? It was Stafford that was the MVP, wasn't it? It should have been Kupp, to be quite honest with you, but maybe I'm a Stafford hater. The reason I'm bringing it up is that Cooper Kupp, I think, ran like a 4.5, but he looks a lot faster than that on the field. So I'm talking about the things that were going to a kid's quote unquote recruiting ranking. Oh my God, 5-star speed, right? 5-star size, right? But there's a lot more that goes into it. So I think that is things that Michigan can do better at, and they can help close that gap. You probably would never recruit at the level that Ohio State does, but that shouldn't be an excuse to not beat them more. Because it goes back to Mark's point about strength. You have the brand, you have the block M, and that matters. You're not at least you don't have, both things working against you. At least you don't have on the field results working against you and lack of brand recognition. People will always recognize that block M. So that's one foot in the door. So if you can start to win on a semi-regular basis, now you're really talking about, like as I said, changing things, changing the tide.